what might be causing our periods to be irregular or absent with PCOS? And then on the other spectrum, why might they be heavy and prolonged? So what was causing these problems?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, like you said before, like every person is different, and there's a lot of different reasons for this, but I thought I'd kind of jump into two of the biggest ones that I see a lot. And I'll start with the irregular periods, and I'll talk about the heavy stuff after. So the first one, the first reason I see all the time is insulin resistance, causing our periods to be completely absent or irregular. And a lot of times I get women with PCOS and they say, oh no, there's nothing wrong with my blood sugar. My doctor checked it or whatever, or they don't, they're not overweight. So they assume they don't have that problem, for example, but almost 100% of women with PCOS have some degree of insulin resistance. Sometimes it can be really difficult to even see on blood work if your doctor isn't ordering the right kinds of tests to see what's going on there. And what happens with the insulin resistance is this. So your ovaries, which produce the majority of your sex hormones, and they're, the main thing that's regulating when you're getting your periods and all of that, have a very delicate relationship with insulin. And so when you have insulin resistance, when you have blood sugar problems and imbalances going on, communication between insulin and your ovaries gets all mucked up. It gets all, and what this ends up resulting in is really weird hormone imbalances, like imbalances with estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone. So insulin resistance will cause us to overproduce testosterone. And so that estrogen and progesterone get out of balance, and you're not ovulating and all of this. It can also create imbalances into brain hormones, FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, and LH, luteinizing hormone. And typically women with PCOS will have some type of imbalance in the ratio of these hormones, and that can prevent things like ovulation from happening. It can prevent things like your body's ability to really build up hormone in your uterus and all of that stuff. So that's really the biggest one that I see all the time. And this is not only relevant to irregular and absent periods, but it's relevant for the heavy and prolonged as well. This is the first thing that I work with my clients all the time. How can we get this insulin resistance under control so that communication with your ovaries is happening in a good way, and it's happening normally as it should? So that's number one. The second one is adrenal stress. This was a huge one for me personally because I addressed the insulin resistance. I had a really good diet going on. I was supplementing and all this stuff, and I couldn't seem to get my period under 40, 45 days. For a long time, at least a year, I was dealing with this. I couldn't figure out why. And then I got to the point where I was extremely stressed out about it. We just want to have the damn period already. It's like such a relief. And it was mentally causing me to be very anxious and upset. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to stop focusing on the period, ovulation, and instead I'm going to focus on my stress and how I'm managing it and my adrenal strength and all of this stuff. And when I did that, that's when they really started to come down, and then went below 40 days and below 35 days, and then now to where I'm at right now. But adrenals are really important because, first of all, adrenals are our stress glands. We have two of them, one on top of each other. They secrete hormones like cortisol, for example, but they also produce sex hormones, testosterone, progesterone, etc., in smaller amounts. What happens is when we're chronically stressed, when our bodies are overproducing cortisol because of, a crappy boss, a long computer, or whatever kind of stresses that we have going on in our lives, it's going to need a lot of ingredients or building blocks, if you will, to make these stress hormones. And so it's going to steal them from your sex hormone. Progesterone is a big one. And so you don't have enough progesterone to ovulate. If you do, you might have a really short luteal fuse. You might have miscarriage or inability to get pregnant. So focusing on your adrenal stress and your stress management is huge for irregular and absent periods. And also for the heavy and prolonged bleeding as well. But those are the kind of two main ones. And then if we have time, you let me know. I would like to share another one that's more specific to the heavy bleeding. Can we dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, let's definitely go into what causes the heavy and prolonged, because I know a lot of women who really suffer from painful as well. And just like really I remember I was watching one of your Facebook lives and you said one of your clients had like a 60-day bleed or something.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Oh my God.
It's crazy. Like, I didn't know how she was even functioning. I forget how long this went on, but it was at least a year prior to when we worked together. She would bleed for 2 months straight. It would stop for maybe a week or so, and then it would resume for another 60 days. And she went on and on with this pattern. And this was the first time I had ever seen this in PCOS. Usually it's, you don't get a period at all, or it hardly ever comes. But the main reason for this, besides what we already, talked about, especially the insulin resistance, is estrogen dominance. And bleeding issues such as this, heavy, prolonged bleeding, are more common in women with PCOS who are very overweight versus women who are lean with PCOS. Doesn't mean women who are lean with PCOS don't have this heavy bleeding, but it is seen more often in women who are overweight. And part of this has to do with estrogen dominance, which is basically an imbalance in the ratio of estrogen to progesterone. So you could have too high of estrogen and normal progesterone and have that dominance happening. You could have totally normal or even low levels of estrogen. And if your progesterone is just way too low, that ratio is still going to be off and you're still going to be estrogen dominant. And so what this means is you're constantly building and building and building the lining of your uterus. You don't have enough progesterone and other things going on to hold that there, hold the lining, keep it intact, keep it stable. And so you end up bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. And the thing with women who are overweight with PCOS is that when you have excess fat on your body, especially if it's in like your lower belly, your hips, your butt, your thighs, this is an area where we store estrogen. So we have even more estrogen going on the more weight you carry in these areas. And eventually the tissue in this area can become almost like an endocrine organ in itself and create its own estrogen. And so it's just this effect, this vicious cycle over and over and over again. And this is one of the biggest contributors I see to the really heavy or prolonged bleeding. To just briefly touch on the pain that you mentioned. Pain with periods is not in and of itself a symptom of PCOS. It can be part of it. There's some extra inflammation going on, but this in and of itself is not a symptom of PCOS. So it might be something to look into, get your doctor to check for like endometriosis, you actually have cysts on your ovaries or not. Sometimes this can cause pain or fibroids or just really a lot of inflammation in the pelvis. So I do want to make that distinction because I think it's important. There's a lot of times other things besides PCOS going on in our bodies and we don't realize it because the doctors give you the one diagnosis and then they're kind of done with you. So if you're having a lot of pain, go get that checked out for sure.
Yeah.